I'm gonna start by saying something that I'm sure will upset many people, and that is that I didn't really like the 1990 version of The Witches. Now, just to clarify, I thought Angelica Houston did an amazing job as the Grand High Witch, but the film itself wasn't very enjoyable for me. I thought the pacing was choppy, the last act felt rushed and anticlimactic, and the other characters not nearly as engaging. But I'd say my biggest issue is that I take qualm with the actual events of the book itself that these movies are based off of. This story feels small and too self-contained, almost like it should be the first half of an entire adventure, because when you compare this story to other grand children's books by the same author, like Charlie and the Chocolate Factory or James and the Giant Peach, this story just feels significantly less epic by comparison. So going into this new version, I had to separate my issues with the actual story and see if this new version can improve upon it, and I'm happy to say that I think it does. I actually had a very enjoyable time with this new movie. It's not a perfect film, but I'll explain what I liked about it and how it was able to stand out from the 1990 version and how it was able to win me over in the end. Let's talk about easily the best part of the movie, which is the scene-stealing and scene-chewing performance by Anne Hathaway as the Grand High Witch. You can tell she's having an absolute blast playing this role, from the ridiculous accent, over-the-top expressions, playing up the campiness, regalness, and unabashed diva-ness in this role. And you know what? She owns it. This is a character I could keep watching on repeat and never get sick of her. She's fierce and terrifying, but she hasn't lost those comedic touches of hers. There are moments where you see the Hathaway flair come through, and I think she blew this role out of the water and was picture perfect in every scene. I also appreciated that they gave her more to chew on in this role, as opposed to Angelica Houston, by adding a few extra scenes and pieces of dialogue. It gave me just enough of her to be satisfied, which is a criticism I take with the 1990 original, where I felt we didn't get nearly enough Angelica Houston as we deserved. They don't make that same mistake in this one with Hathaway, I'm happy to say, and she's easily my favorite part of the movie, and her performance is one that any Anne Hathaway fan will not want to miss. The next best part of this movie is Octavia Spencer as the grandmother, and especially her relationship with her grandson. This is another misstep in the 1990 original where I never found myself caring about the grandmother purely based on her performance alone, and Octavia Spencer brings the energy we need. Sure, she plays the character in a way not too different than any of her other past performances, but that's okay, because Octavia Spencer brings a warmth, sass, humor, and charisma to all of her roles that makes her easily one of the most likable actors currently working in Hollywood. So sure, she's not winning any awards for this performance, but she gave the role so much more heart, especially in the beginning of the film, and she kept the energy up with all of her scenes, where I didn't feel like we only got energy from Hathaway. They both elevated their respective roles, and I guess my only qualm is that I would have loved to have seen the both of them in more scenes together. A part that I especially loved, which I don't think was in the 1990 version, correct me if I'm wrong, was an added backstory to Octavia Spencer's character in relation to the witches that I felt gave her an added layer of depth that really worked well, especially in her character's motivation and understandable disdain for the witches. I did like the main hero boy's performance, played by Jazir Bruno, a lot more in this version as well, and especially the on-screen chemistry he has with Octavia Spencer playing his grandmother. The beginning of the film in setting up their relationship was especially touching and had some of the very best interactions here. Sure, the main boy is given some cheesy lines throughout, but I never thought he was completely cringe or annoying, as many child actor performances sadly can be. And the same goes for his other mouse companions. I thought they were cute and funny, and I wasn't expecting one of them to be voiced by Kristen Chenoweth, which was fun to discover. Now, this movie felt whimsical and like a children's fairy tale come to life. I thought the sets were ornate. The effects used for the witches themselves were fantastic and freaky at times, and the pacing was strong, and the score was beautiful and epic to only heighten the story when it needed it. Music is everything, and they really brought their A game with the score for this film. I also liked how there were genuinely creepy moments visually presented, as you would expect from seeing The Witches. This isn't a children's horror movie, though, by any means, but I do give the creative team props in presenting a handful of genuinely creepy visuals that did leave me going, oh, they went there. And even though I knew where this story was going, I was very pleasantly surprised that they expanded and added new things to the final act that really helped improve my overall view of the story itself. And with how anticlimactic I thought the third act was in the 1990 original, I'm so happy they were able to stick the landing on this one. It brought up the level of suspense, and it left me actually wondering how they were going to wrap it up, and these added surprises were very much appreciated. And with how the film expanded upon its ending, it actually left me feeling more content with the story itself. Now, like I said, this movie isn't perfect. The great Stanley Tucci was completely underutilized in this role, although I did love his couple scenes with Anne Hathaway, giving us a mini Devil Wears Prada reunion. Now, the film's effects can feel a little cheap and unfinished when it came to the CGI animal characters. They were strong for the witches, but they weren't always quite as strong with the animals. There were also a few moments of campy dialogue, and that's, a couple issues with the script. And I'm sure most devout fans will take qualm with the visual changes made in presenting elements of the Grand High Witch in her truest form. Now, those criticisms are all valid, and I think there are a few missed opportunities there for sure. And of course, there's my biggest qualm in that the story continues to feel smaller in scale compared to other Roald Dahl's epics. But to that end, with how great a performance Anne Hathaway gives, and she really does as the Grand High Witch, probably one of her most dynamic performances to date, I forgive the missteps in her character's visuals. And because Octavia Spencer, and to a degree Jazir Bruno, bring much more heart to their respective roles as the grandmother and grandson, giving me heroes I actually care about, I forgive some of the cheesier dialogue. The movie is well-paced, it has a clear tone, it's fun, it has enchanting visuals, it's creepy at times, and it levels up its final act in necessary ways that elevated my overall experience watching this film and enjoying this story. It's not groundbreaking, but it's incredibly charming, and I'll happily add this film to my roster of Halloween films I watch each year moving forward. I'm going to give The Witches a B+. And that's my review of The Witches, which you can currently watch on HBO Max, and that is a recommendation from me. I think it is definitely worth your time. I'd be curious to know what you think, so feel free to list your opinions down below if you've seen the movie. As always, thank you all for tuning in, and until next time, I'm Ryan Bamey, signing off. Bye, everyone.